welcome to episode 13 of Give a Fuck, presented by Spark Consciousness. Some people say 13 is unlucky, but I think that is wrong, because 13 in numerology is a 4. If you add 1 and 3 together, you get 4. And 4 is all about how you are safe and protected, and that's pretty cool. I am your host, Sarah Woodard. Among other things, I am a certified shamanic practitioner, Reiki master teacher, activist, educator, speaker, and award-winning children's author. I am also a fierce defender of the underdog, which for me means wildlife, companion and work/farmed animals, Mother Nature, and Gaia herself. I care deeply about my fellow human animals and believe that when we learn to live in harmony with nature, we also learn to live in harmony with ourselves and each other. I'm fearless about doing my own inner work and growth, and am passionate about helping create a world where all beings are respected and honored. I have a deep connection to Gaia and feel particularly connected in the presence of the beautiful Colorado Front Range. When I am not busy working to present information about living in harmony with Mother Nature, I share my time with 3 wonderful cats, enjoy birdwatching, and experiencing all the outdoors has to offer. My life journey to this point has been filled with twists, turns, and changes, as has everyone's. For me, the constants from birth to now are a strong connection to Gaia, a deep-seated need to serve and help create a more compassionate and healthy world, and a love of both learning and sharing my knowledge. Those lifelong constants are what have brought me to this point. All of the knowledge I've acquired in the process of learning to live my life in harmony, as well as new information I come across, are the inspiration for and knowledge bombs presented in this podcast. Through connection to nature, I help young millennial women and others feeling lost, expand their knowledge, feel connected to the world around them, and live with greater compassion. And a lot of that looks like finding your purpose, which is why that's what we talk about a lot on this show. The purpose of this show, in addition to helping you find your purpose, is to present new information and or old information in a new way to help you see connections and live in harmony. Sometimes I also share other resources, as I love to help you continue learning. And as a quick reminder, Give a Fuck is spelled F***K. A huge thank you to my existing patrons on Patreon. We could not do what we do here at this podcast without your support. So a quick life update. If you've tuned into some recent episodes, you'll know that we are in search of a unicorn house, me and the kitties. It needs to be something I can afford, which in the market where I live in Colorado and want to remain living is pretty tough. I'm not independently wealthy, but houses out here are priced for the independently wealthy. It's a bit of a weird thing that's happening here, and I don't fully understand it due to a lot of reasons based on what's happening with the cats and with me and my mental and physical health and changes that have happened at the apartment complex that we've been living in for the past year. I arrived at a decision that if we do not have that unicorn house by a certain, or at least we're not going to be living in it, but if we have not at least found it and are taking the steps to, go to closing with the bank and all of that by a specific day and time, and I'm not going to share what that is because I record these in advance, and by the time you are listening to this, it will have passed. But if it has not occurred by that specific day and time, I'm just going to take matters into my own hands, and I'm no longer going to wait for the spirit peeps and the universe to find it for us. We're going to find a house to rent for a year or something, but we have to get out of here at this point. That, I think, is the biggest update. So at this point, we would jump into the segment where I would do answers to your questions, which would be submitted via Patreon. For this week, however, I don't have any applicable questions, so I wanted to just take a second to share with you how Patreon works. And if you're not familiar with the concept, Patreon is kind of like crowdsourcing for creatives. It helps us pay for a variety of different things. And instead of like one person paying $1 billion to support one artist, like they did back in Michelangelo's day, each of you pays a small amount of money every month, and it adds up to a lot. So the way it works, at least for me, is that when you opt in and stick around, you'll get some fun bennies. Everything from submitting a question, which I would answer during this segment, to discount codes for other offerings such as the course and the magazine, as well as merchandise. You can see each of them on my Patreon page, which is linked in the show notes. 10% of every dollar, whether it's Patreon or any of my other offerings, goes to support charitable causes, helping make the world a more compassionate place. And in the case specifically of Patreon, the other 90% pays for software and equipment if needed, and helping keep the kitty babies happy while I ignore them to create each episode. And you may have heard Sunny meowing already, and if not, you may hear her throughout the course of the show. She's a little out of sorts today. She's had some seizures in the past few days, and that's not uncommon. She's had a seizure disorder since she was not even 2 years old, but it's been a little excessive. That's one of the reasons that we need to move. But if you do hear her, it's also her saying, "Hey, I need some new toys, Mom." So if you guys could pony up, a couple bucks every month to keep them in new toys and keep them entertained, that'd be cool. Right, Sunny? Of course, now she doesn't meow on cue. Typical cat, right? Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into the Satan of the show. And today we are going to be talking about acceptance and letting go as part of finding your purpose. Acceptance and letting go are pretty spiritual concepts, but let's remember that finding your purpose, especially as I teach it through connection with nature, it is a spiritual journey. So on this journey to find your purpose, you're going to come to places where you feel lost, confused, frustrated, stuck, kind of like you started to feel even before you started on this journey to find your purpose. That was kind of what set you, or maybe it was what set you on this journey to find your purpose. And to this point, you maybe made some progress and you're starting to feel pretty good about things. And then all of a sudden you're back in that place, right? It happens, and it's going to happen. So get used to the idea and understand that this is a signal that it's time to accept something and let go of what no longer serves you in order to move forward. Now, you may have heard other coaches and experts tell you that you need to decide what to let go of or decide when you need to let go. You don't. You absolutely don't. With the right tools, which I'm going to explain in this show, you can let go of anything standing in your way without knowing what it is. Similarly, other coaches and experts may offer suggestions like create an affirmation or use a mantra. You certainly can if you wish, but those are very much not necessary, and they may not work for you. They really didn't work for me. So before I explain how to work through this process of acceptance and letting go, it's important to understand why this matters as part of finding your life purpose. Painful experiences, such as situations with family members or other occasions when negative feelings have arisen and gone unresolved, they stay with us. And for a time, they can even serve a purpose. They may help us to stay safe or avoid similar situations, as an example. Over time, though, they stop serving a purpose and they become barriers to the personal and spiritual growth necessary to find your purpose. And that's when you start to feel this renewed sense of lost, confused, frustrated, stuck, and all that. When that happens, like I said, it's a cue. It's time to start working on acceptance and letting go. Plus, as humans, our ego minds want to know all the things. We want to know when, why, where, how is it going to happen, and why isn't it happening? When, where, how, and why we want. And why do other people seem to be getting what we want? Sound familiar? I have had to work through this even just in this process of finding this house. So I'm sure it sounds familiar to you too. And again, this is a sign of working on acceptance and letting go. So without further ado, here's how to do that. And let me just preface this by saying that I have used every single one of these techniques, so I can tell you for sure that they work. Number one is show gratitude. Remember, Whatever is keeping you feeling stuck right now, it once served a purpose. So be grateful for that and ask it to move on. Here's some example phrasing. Thank you to whatever situation, feeling, etc., for keeping me safe, teaching me a lesson, etc. I appreciate the positives you brought to my life, but you no longer serve me. It's time for you to move on. Please do that right now. Now, if you don't know the specifics for the blanks, you can keep it really generic, like, thank you to this situation for the positives you've brought to my life. This is a very similar technique that is used in interfamily systems therapy. So if this speaks to you and you feel like you need to go deeper with it, try to find an IFS therapist near you. Number 2 builds on this showing gratitude piece, and you can create a letting go ceremony or ritual. There are a lot of different ways to do this. I'm going to share the 2 that I use the most often because I know they work, right? There are others you can certainly, or you can kind of just get creative and do one that make your own that feels right for you. But I'm going to share these 2 because I know they work from my personal experience. So the first option is to burn it. So to do this, to the best of your ability, write down whatever it is you're trying to move on from. It could be a list, a letter, a few random words. It's whatever works best for you. And once you've done that, you want to gather your tools. At a minimum, you're going to need a fire-safe bowl, a lighter or matches, and the papers you've written on. You could also add incense or oils or herbs or anything else that you think would make it meaningful for you, but you don't have to. As you light the paper, say something similar to that phrasing that I just said about showing gratitude. And then as you watch it burn, imagine all of that pain, that heaviness, those blocks, that stuckness floating away in the smoke. Just imagine it going whoosh, up, up, up and away in that wisp of smoke. Now, if you do this, please be sure to take the proper precautions to keep your home, your community, your pets, and yourself safe. And then the other ritual I like to do is washing it away. And there's actually 2 ways that you can do this. Now, you can use either one. It's really about what speaks best to you. And it may depend on your living circumstances as well or whatever else, but both work fine. So to wash away anything you need to let go of, again, you're going to write it all down. And if you want to use some dissolving paper, that's really fun to do because you can stir it up in the water and it just kind of dissipates. Either way is okay. What you're going to do is write it all down and then you wash it away in nature, like a river, a stream, a pond, or whatever. Or you can use a bowl of water in your home and then spill it out either into a plant or on the ground, or if you really have no other options, into a drain is fine. As you do this spilling out or this washing it away in nature, you're going to, again, say something similar to what we talked about in the showing gratitude. And again, feel it flowing away in the water. Feel it washing away in the water. And then the other way to wash it away is to actually do it in the shower. Well, you're shampooing and you're soaping up and you're rinsing all that down the drain. Say those same words and then imagine them going down the drain with all of your physical dirt and soap rinsings and all of that. If those maybe didn't fully resonate for you, there are some other choices that you can use. If you like meditation, you can certainly look for meditations for acceptance and letting go on YouTube. There's one I particularly like that I will link to in the show notes. If you don't love meditation, but you still really need to work through this process of acceptance and letting go, you might want to try these other tools that have a similar purpose as meditation, but are much more active. So the first one is Emotional Freedom Technique, or EFT. It's also known as tapping. And this works to release blocks, whether you can name them or not. There are a ton of EFT videos on YouTube. I personally really like Melanie Moore and Brad Yates. But that's me. If there's other ones that work for you, go with that. Sound healing is also really cool. You can play most of them in the background of your day and receive the healing benefits. If you can make a few moments to pause and actively listen, the benefits will, of course, be amplified. And again, just search on YouTube for sound healing for acceptance and letting go. You could try a Reiki treatment. Now, as a Reiki master teacher, I know that it's best if you can find a practitioner to work with you on your specific situation. But if you can't, or you're just not ready to do that yet, or it's not in your budget or whatever, you can try a Reiki healing video on YouTube. Again, search for one that is specifically about acceptance and letting go and see if any of the ones that come up in the search speak for you. And then the fourth one is to do the subconscious work. So what do I mean by that? Talk therapy is great, and all of those similar therapy techniques, they're really great. The thing is, though, is that they work with our conscious mind, and just like affirmations and mantras, they are our conscious mind, and it has to penetrate down into our subconscious before it really starts to change at a deep level how we live. Because our subconscious has a ton of control. It dictates how we respond to things. When we say, oh, that was a knee-jerk reaction, or that was just a reflex, that's our subconscious mind at work. And it happens all the time. By doing the subconscious work, however, you reverse the process, and you therefore accelerate the healing process. There is a woman I've worked with in the past. Her name is April Adams, and the technique at least used to be called PS Tech. I'm not really sure if it's still called that anymore or not. Things change. I can verify that this technique works, and I will link to her website for you in the show notes if you want to investigate that further. As I said at the top of the show, I have used every single one of these methods at various points in my journey, and I continue to use them as part of my toolbox. I particularly as part of this trying to find a house process and needing to go through acceptance and letting go as part of that. I have been using the meditation and the EFT and the sound healing and even a little bit of the Reiki just to get through this process and not be so driven by the, why isn't it happening the way I want, when I want, and how I want, and why is it happening for other people? Stuff, right? Again, use whichever ones speak to you. Feel free to change or combine them as you desire. There is no right or wrong way to accept and let go. This process of acceptance and letting go is as personal as your journey to find your purpose. Do what works for you and leave the rest. I am here to support you. This is my purpose. I had to go through this whole process of finding my purpose. And I know now my purpose is to help you find your purpose through connection with nature. Let me know what else you need to know, what questions you have. Shoot me questions on Patreon, and I will do my level best to answer them. With that said, I'm now going to move on to housekeeping. You can find me on social media and my website, all of which are linked in the show notes. I would love for you to take a look at the online course, which doors reopen in June. And also consider if you have a great story to share about something that happened to you as a result of connecting with nature. I would love for you to consider submitting that for publication in the upcoming digital magazine. Again, more about both of those things on the website. Not to berate the point, but if you do sign up on Patreon, you'll get some cool benefits there. If your podcast platform allows, I would love for you to take a second to rate the show. It is the freest, easiest way to support any creators that you love because it does help us expand our reach. For the next show, which is in 2 weeks, I am going to talk about 50 different ways to save the planet, because we certainly cannot connect with nature for any reason, for any purpose, if we don't save her. I think that concludes this episode. I will see you in 2 weeks. Until then, continue to expand your knowledge, feel the connections, and live with compassion.